Welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program AA. Yes, here we are, back at the start screen. Back again, starting over again, once more. Yeah, this is the third time, or fourth time. I lost count. This time, it's for a good reason. I changed computers, updated, had to do a lot of things to recover some old files and just gave up and decided to start over and then started playing Kerbal Space Program 0.235 and trying to intercept asteroids and then put it away for a while and went back. And finally, with 0.24, it is a game and it's fun. It's not just a sandbox, an incredible sandbox. It's an actual game. The mechanics have changed a little bit. You now have contracts and science that you have to gain. And contracts are going to be given to you based on your reputation. Let's head on over to, I think it's called Mission Control. This is the right building over here to select for contracts. And the first contracts are just going to be very easy. Launch a vessel, set an altitude record, escape the atmosphere, and orbit Kerbin. So let's select a couple of contracts, launch a new vessel, set an altitude record. Those are going to be the ones that we're going for first. Escape the atmosphere and orbit Kerbin. We'll go for those on the second flight. Alright, I installed a mod and I have to look at what the name of it is. It will be in the description below. Just pointing out over here, nothing else has changed. The mod is going to make it very difficult for me to go back and essentially revert to hangar, revert to EAB, or revert to launch. You're going to give up cash each time. The mission structure in here is very important because every part that you build, as you see, is going to have a dollar value assigned to it. So whether it be the capsule or the different modules that you add to it, the fuel tanks and engines, all are going to add up to, credits, and you only get a certain amount of credits. Now, I usually build a ship that's much different from this and can go into space the first time, but I'm going to be a little bit more cautious and also be a little bit more creative in my design in the first one, being that I only want to break the first two of the contracts. I'm not trying to do the, oh my god, I could beat this game in just one launch. I'm going to try to do it in kind of a historically accurate way and have some fun with it along the way. So I'm going to use these little connector girder systems, and I'm going to put some liquid fuel rockets on the outside. Not even taking any consideration into balancing this. Just want to have fun with the first shot into space. So let's take a look at what I built. Skipping ahead a little bit in the future, this is what I built. It is Kerbal X, and it's never going to work is what I put down for it. So let's launch this thing, which costs 67,910 credits, and see what we can do with it. Here we are in the launch pad, and very simply, all we have to do is just collect enough science to make a vessel that can reach orbit without any worry. And we're going to do this really quickly, just by letting Jeb get some basic science out here. And then we're going to complete the first two contracts. So let's light this candle and see what we can do. And 3, 2, 1. Okay, we went on 1. And we're off. Now, of course, there's no delta V in this thing. We're just trying to meet the 5,000 meter and launch a new vessel. So we launched a new vessel. You can see up in the upper right hand corner we have a little beacon that's glowing green. We're going to use this opportunity for Jeb to get a couple more opportunities for obtaining science. We are now going to light the two side boosters, and now, and of course as we get our electricity up, we are going to send our science back to KSP. So we're going to head north here because my intention is to land on ground so Jeb could grab a little bit more science by getting some rock samples. Of course, he's never leaving home, so that's going to be pretty fun. And this is the MCE module. Essentially, it is going to keep me sane and keep me, let's say, truthful, in that I'm not going to be going back and forth to the hangar and to the launch pad. I'm going to be forced to think about my designs before I launch them, just like you would in real life. I'm trying to do a little bit of role play with this one, and in the future ones, I'll be talking from the point of view of the mission controller. So here we are sending some science back to KSP. And of course we're taking a look at the second piece of science, sending it back. And this is where things go haywire. As the fuel starts to diminish, be used up inside these, the weight and balance is all thrown off. We do a little loop-to-loop there. Jeb's okay though. He never knew or never expected to be going into space on this ride anyway. This is just a test vehicle to test out the 3 engine systems. And we have our 2 contracts met. And of course we're almost out of fuel as we spin around again. And we keep that science for ourselves. And we're in coast mode. So let's see if we can do something to speed up the next few minutes of this flight. For the next portion of this video, we're going to be going at 2x, just so we can talk a little bit. So the whole premise here is that in 0.24, you have to secure contracts. You get better contracts with more reputation. You gain reputation by completing contracts. The ships themselves will cost you money to make. Each individual part has a cost associated with it. So completing contracts and building the right ship is going to be very important because you do not want to go into negative funds. And of course I'm adding a certain level of difficulty with the mission controller mod, which will force me to pay a certain value to either go back to the launch pad if I screw up my launch, or go back to the VAB if I screw up the design. So in this particular game now, I've got to be very good at building my rockets the first time and flying them, or I'm going to start losing money. And I think that little bit of difficulty is going to make me come back and play this game more, even though Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen are getting much more fun to play, as is my other guilty pleasure, the World of Tanks. So we land and destroy our engines. We didn't have enough parachutes to make it down safely, so we lost a little bit of money on this run. So Jeb does his little face plant, gets on the ground, he's going to get some dirt, and of course we're going to get told not so good while he's posing for his picture. Can't get an EVA report because we already did, and it looks like dirt. That's pretty funny. And we're going to plant our flag, and our flag is going to be Jeb's farm. Let's go. And there it is. Jeb's farm is now planted in the ground on Kerbin. And amazing. Looks a lot like my home. Wait. Is this my farm? Okay, that's it for Jeb. We're back at the Space Center. We got 14 science for that recovery, and along with the science we sent back, I think it gave us 27. We then have to run over here to the satellite dishes, and we need to recover more, and now we have a total of 35 science, and we gained all of the rep and got a lot of money back for the parts that we used. So what are we going to do with this? We're going to go and head over to Mission Control and just look at these two. We're going to take the stacked decoupler. That's a new mission that we have. That'll go well with the next rocket that we build. And we have to do this while we're landed at Kerbin. So it leads to you having to design a rocket that could use that T-18 decoupler while you're on the ground. So let's go over to the Science Research Center. Of course, we got to take the first one. And we'll take these engines up here for the second one. Okay, let's go build our rocket now. Here we are back in the VAB, and you can see we have a bunch more parts. Occasionally the parts that you need to use for the different missions, the different contracts, are going to be highlighted in blue. That doesn't happen right off the bat. I find that happening later, and I don't know what the difference is. In future episodes, I'll spend more time in the building of the rocket, but let's just skip ahead to what it looks like when I'm done. Here I am putting the finishing touches on the rocket. It looks kind of like a Mercury Redstone. No fins in the bottom, but just pretty straight and long. And if you look, there's a T-18 at the very bottom with the fuel tank underneath it. That's built so we can complete the contract that told us to test the T-18 while landed. All I have to do is set up my staging and then it's off to liftoff. Here we are at liftoff in a very basic and easy to build ship to just get you into orbit. It's using the KW Rocketry mod, and I'm using both of their engines. Later on in the game you're going to have to test the stock engines, so remember that when you're setting up your ships. So I quickly get off the pad after getting some science on it with the goo container. I'm going to store it, and this is going to have a very reasonable acceleration. So the two stages, very simple. Get me up into space and get me back. And we're going to do a lot here. So while this is taking off, I'm going to give you the thoughts I have on this particular series. In the past, I had a lot of fun building bases on the moon, on Minmus, and then getting off to Mars and exploring it in a automated rover. And I'm going to try to get back to that, but this time using the contract system, and this time doing it making money from the contract system. So I'm going to have to be very particular in what I build and make it pertinent to what the contracts are going to be asking me. At the same time, let's go over some of the mods that I have installed. I installed procedural fairings mostly because I hate trying to line up the fairings that come with the game, though I have gotten much better at it. I think using procedural fairings is much easier. KW Rocketry, because they have very realistic looking parts that work and look beautiful. I love it. I have Kerbal Attachment System, mainly because when I'm setting up my bases, I'm going to need to be able to move fuel from my Kethane extractors and plants into the ships that are going to be taking off from those bases. Yes, I also have the Kethane mod. I have the docking alignment tool or mod. I have Kerbal Alarm Clock, and I believe just a few others that are installed. So I primarily want to have fun with the series. I love playing the game, and I'm looking to make it something fun to do again. So Jeb, Bob, Bill, and all of the other Kerbins are going to set off to try to get Kerbal Kind into space above Kerbin and then start pushing out from there. And that's essentially the way I want to do it. A lot of people now that have been playing it for a really long time just like to get off to the far reaches of the solar system as quickly as they can. I'm going to try to do it in a way that, that happened in our life. Building, rockets that put a man in space, getting satellites up, remotely landing on planets and then sending Kerbals there. And that's what my intentions are. I really want to have fun with this. Oh, the hexagons around the planet, in case you don't know, that I believe is from the Kethane mod, and it could be turned off with that little green window at the top left. I should probably do that the next time I do one of these. So I've got more than enough delta V in this, even though it looks like I've used half my fuel. And we are going to squeak into orbit with just enough fuel to get out. And we're going to be in a low orbit with a perigee or periapsis at about 75 to 79 kilometers. And I'm going to make the apoapsis or apogee, whatever you want to call it, at just over 130, 140. Only because I want an elliptical orbit, so I can use less fuel to pull myself down into the planet if I don't make this right the first time. So let's speed this up because this could be long and boring and tedious. So let's get Jeb into orbit and then let's start sending back some science. So we're just trying to get up to the right altitude at this point to start our burn. Here we go. Pushing ourselves back into a higher orbit, or I should say trying to attain orbit. Alright, and we have done it. And let's check and see how much fuel we got left. Yep, we have just enough fuel as I push the orbit up just a little bit higher on the other side just in case. And we have more than enough fuel to make it back safely. So now that we're sure that Jeb is going to complete this mission, let's talk a little bit about the next few. And the next few missions, they're going to send us off to the moon. They're going to send us off to Minmus. And they're going to ask us to do a bunch of tests on craft in the atmosphere and on the launch pad. So when we're picking our science, we're going to have to look at the contracts that are going to be offered. So right now, since we got some science, we're going back and we're going to take some. Right off the bat, we're going to take the one for the radio-mounted parachute. It's going to be tough. It's going to ask us to do it at a certain speed and altitude. And I don't think I make it. And we're going to leave the rest of them to see which science items we unlock this time. So we're going back into our ship. And I think there's a mod that lets you do this from the space, from space, but I have not loaded it. Jeb's going to go about his merry way getting science as we talk a little bit more. Now in Scott Manley's videos, they're awesome. He's doing things like the Interstellar Quest, where he's unlocking science to unlock warp drives to develop that technology. I haven't loaded that mod this time. I tried to follow him along with that, but I think I have a lot more fun setting up bases and building a space program similarly to the way that we do it in real life. So, not saying I love watching his, so we're not knocking it. Jeb's going around and getting as much science as he can, and he's doing that by taking observations above the highlands, above the mountains, and above the desert, and that's what you're going to be watching. So as we're getting contracts, like I said before, there are going to be things that specifically have to be met, some specific conditions: altitude, speed, while landed, while splashdown, in space, on a trajectory, escape trajectory, on a low altitude trajectory. All of these things are going to be different. And be very, very sure you're following the directions, because if you go up and waste all that money on a flight and don't meet the conditions, you're not going to get paid for it. And these contracts do have deadlines, and if you don't satisfy them by the end, you have to pay a penalty. One example is, while I was playing through in a test career, I got a contract to test a radio-mounted parachute at a certain height and speed. No matter how many times I tried, I couldn't meet that speed. And then I built a jet fighter, took it up into the high atmosphere, launched a rocket engine on it, got up to the speed I needed to, and then opened the parachute and completed that contract and got the money I needed for it. Alright, I'm just going to burn this fuel to try to slow myself down a little bit more, and then get rid of that, and all of a sudden, this is where I think I've just destroyed my ship. Look at it coming back at me, and I just very, very, very quickly duck out of the way of it. Oh my god, that was scary. So Jeb's coming down back to Kerbin, and we're going to try to get this chute to go off at the right time, and I missed it. Look, I hit it, and I missed it, because I guess there's a lag in the time that you hit it and it goes out. I swear that chute was out when it was supposed to be, but I'm going to have to do that contract again. Well, not do it again, try to do another flight to complete that contract, because I missed it. And those are just the things that are going to happen in this part of the game. So Jeb is floating blissfully, I guess. He looks happy, talking to himself right into the ocean. He's going to get out, and he's going to get a little bit of science. Come on, get in the water. Come on, you can do it. Okay. And he gets the water, and it is wet. Doesn't think he needed a suit. And of course, he tries to get back on his ship and inside, and we recover. So we got 100 or so science from this. I think we're at 123 at this point. 113, 133, whatever it is. We recovered all those parts, and we got 21.2 reputation. And now we're going to go do our unlocks. Of course, we have to pick these based on what we know we have to test. So more science is always good. And we'll take the structural items over here. And with that said, I will see you next time on KSP AA. You all be safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.